It was supposed to be a quiet morning at the corner bakery in Seoul's busy district. Fresh bread cooling on racks, the hum of espresso machines, golden light streaming through spotless windows. Then the door chimed softly, almost apologetically. A woman entered, her coat faded and patched at the elbows, her movements careful, measured. Beside her, a little girl in a bright pink dress, too vibrant for the rest of the picture, clutched a worn backpack decorated with cartoon characters. The contrast was sharp. The dress said someone tried, but the shoes, scuffed and splitting at the seams, told the real story. They approached the counter slowly. Behind the glass, rows of perfect pastries gleamed under warm lights. Cream puffs, strawberry tarts, chocolate croissants dusted with powdered sugar. The kind of simple luxuries that separate one kind of life from another. The little girl pressed her palms against the glass, eyes wide. "Yama, look at the bread with the cream inside." The mother's smile trembled at the edges. She bent down, smoothed her daughter's hair with a worn hand, then straightened and stepped to the counter. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, each word costing something. "Excuse me, do you have any leftover sandwiches? From yesterday, maybe? Anything that didn't sell?" The cashier's expression shifted. Not cruel exactly, but cool, distant. One of the other staff members glanced over, eyebrows raised. A few customers near the window turned to look. "We don't keep expired food, ma'am," the cashier said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "Health regulations." The little girl's face fell. The mother's shoulders curved inward, as if folding around something breaking inside her chest. She nodded quickly, too quickly, already turning to leave, murmuring apologies no one asked for. But someone else had been watching. In the corner, at a small table near the window, sat a man in a dark tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of most people's rent. His espresso sat untouched, cooling. His hands, strong, scarred across the knuckles, rested flat on the table. Hale Crow had seen poverty before. He'd lived it, survived it, escaped it through blood and will and ruthlessness. But something about this moment, the pink dress, the mother's quiet humiliation, the way the child tried so hard not to cry, cut through decades of carefully constructed armor. He saw the mother's lips pressed together, holding back words. He saw the little girl gripping her backpack straps like a lifeline. And he saw something else, a ghost of another woman, another child, another moment when asking for help had cost everything. The chair scraped as he stood. Every head in the bakery turned. The conversations died mid-sentence. Even the espresso machine seemed quiet. Hale Crow was not a man people ignored. His reputation moved through rooms before he did. Whispers of a ruthless empire built in shadows, of a man who ruled through fear and absolute control. The staff behind the counter went rigid. The mother turned, her face draining of color as recognition flashed in her eyes. But Hale didn't look at her. Not yet. He walked forward, his footsteps deliberate, measured, and stopped just behind them. His shadow fell across the display case, darkening the pastries beneath the glass. Then he did something no one in that bakery expected. He knelt down, at eye level with the little girl. His voice dropped to something almost gentle, rough around the edges and used to softness, but trying. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl looked up at her mother, uncertain. The mother was frozen, terrified, unable to speak. "It's okay," Hale said quietly, his eyes never leaving the child's face. "I just want to know what kind of sandwich you'd like. The fresh ones. The good ones." The little girl's eyes went wide. The fresh ones? "Any kind you want," he said. And then, looking up at the mother, at the fear and confusion and desperate hope warring in her expression, he added in a voice that carried through the entire bakery, "And whatever else your daughter needs. Whatever makes her happy." He stood, pulled a black card from his pocket, and placed it on the counter with a sound like a gavel coming down. "Everything," he said to the cashier, his tone shifting back to the one that moved mountains and ended arguments. "Pack everything she points at, and do it with respect." The mother's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled over, silent and sudden. The little girl looked between her mother and the stranger in the expensive suit, not understanding the weight of what was happening, but understanding kindness when she saw it. What none of them knew, not the mother, not the child, not the stunned staff, was that in 7 days, Hale Crow's phone would vibrate with a message from a wrong number. A message from another little girl, in another desperate moment, that would unravel everything he'd spent 20 years building. But right now, in this bakery, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the ghost of his own childhood, Hale Crow made a choice. And that choice would be the first crack in the wall around his heart. The beginning of a transformation that would cost him everything and save him completely. The little girl pointed at a cream-filled pastry. That one, Hale asked. She nodded, smiling for the first time since entering the bakery. Good choice, he said quietly. And somewhere in the darkness of his carefully controlled world, something ancient and buried began to wake. Stay with me until the end, because what Darius did next will make your heart stop and start again. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. The cashier's hands trembled as she packed pastries into a white box, each movement too careful, too precise. The other staff member had disappeared into the back room. Smart. The customers who'd been snickering earlier suddenly found their phones fascinating, heads down, avoiding eye contact. Hale stayed where he was, a wall between the mother and the rest of the bakery. He didn't need to say anything else. His presence was enough. 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in expensive fabric. The kind of man whose silences carried more weight than other people's screams. The little girl, oblivious to the tension, was pointing at a chocolate croissant now, then a strawberry tart, her voice gaining confidence with each choice. Can I have that one too? And that one. All of them, Hale said simply. The mother, he didn't know her name yet, hadn't asked, was crying quietly, one hand still covering her mouth, the other gripping her daughter's shoulder. Not from fear anymore, though fear was still there. From something more complicated. Relief. Shame. Gratitude. The kind of emotional overload that comes when survival is all you've known and suddenly someone offers you more. I can't, she started, her voice breaking. This is too much. I can't accept. Hale turned to look at her for the first time since kneeling. His eyes, dark and unreadable in most contexts, held something different now. Not soft exactly, but not the ice his enemies knew. Recognition, maybe. The look of someone who'd once stood exactly where she was standing. You're not accepting, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I'm paying a debt. She blinked, confused. We've never met. No, he agreed. But I've been where your daughter is. Watching my mother try to make something out of nothing. Watching her smile when there was nothing to smile about. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Someone should have helped her. No one did. The cashier slid the box across the counter, overstuffed with pastries and sandwiches, enough food for days. She avoided Hale's eyes, mumbled something about having a nice day, her voice hollow. Hale picked up the box and held it out to the little girl. This is yours. Happy early birthday, if you have one coming up. The girl took it carefully, reverently, like it might disappear. It was last week, she whispered. Something in Hale's chest twisted. Last week. This child had a birthday last week and was only now getting cake. He nodded once, sharp, final, then looked at the mother again. There's a community center on Myeongdong Street. They have programs, job training, childcare. He pulled a business card from his inner pocket, plain, black, just a phone number embossed in silver. Call this number. Tell them Hale sent you. They'll help. The mother took the card with shaking fingers, staring at it like it might burn her. Why are you doing this? Hale was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant, looking at something beyond the bakery walls. Because I couldn't do it 20 years ago. He stepped back, the moment breaking. The mother bowed deeply, traditional and instinctive, tears still streaming. The little girl clutched her box of pastries and smiled up at him. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Hale turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the still silent bakery. As he reached for the handle, he paused and spoke without turning around, his voice carrying clearly. Next time someone asks for day-old bread, you give it to them. Understood. The cashier nodded frantically. Yes, sir. Understood. The door chimed as he left, stepping back into the soul morning, back into the world where he was Hale Crow, untouchable and feared. But something had shifted, something small but irreversible. Behind him, through the bakery window, he could see the little girl biting into a cream puff, her mother crying and laughing at the same time. Hale walked to his car and didn't look back. 7 days later, his phone would ring in the dark, and everything would change again. Mira hadn't meant to come back to the bakery. She'd told herself she wouldn't, that she'd take the stranger's kindness and disappear into the parts of Seoul where people like him never looked. But the business card in her pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, and her daughter Lila kept asking about the nice man in the black suit. So here she was, standing outside the Golden Bakery at noon, the lunch rush in full swing, trying to gather the courage to walk through that door again. She could see him through the window. Same corner table. Same dark suit, though this one had thin pinstripes. Same untouched espresso. He sat like he owned the space. Not arrogant exactly, just absolutely certain that the world would bend around him and not the other way around. Mira pushed the door open. The chime sounded like an alarm in her ears. Several heads turned. The same cashier from last week went pale, her eyes darting between Mira and the man in the corner. But Darius didn't look up. He was reading something on his phone, his expression unreadable, carved from stone. Before Mira could speak, Lila pulled free from her hand and ran toward his table, her pink dress bright against the neutral tones of the bakery. "Mr. Nice Man, we came back." Darius's head snapped up, genuine surprise flickering across his features before he controlled it. He set his phone down carefully as Lila stopped at his table, breathless and beaming. "Lila, no." Mira hurried forward, mortified. "I'm sorry, she didn't mean to." "It's fine." Darius's voice was measured, but something in his posture had shifted. He looked at Lila, then at Mira, then at the staff watching from behind the counter with barely concealed curiosity. His jaw tightened. He stood abruptly, the movement drawing every eye in the bakery. "You're here for lunch," he said. "Not a question, a decision. We were just passing by." Mira started. "I didn't mean to bother." "You're not bothering anyone." He walked to the counter, Lila trailing after him like he was magnetic. Mira followed helplessly, feeling the weight of dozens of stares. Darius placed both hands flat on the counter, leaning forward slightly. The cashier took an involuntary step back. "Everything on today's menu," he said clearly. "Fresh sandwiches, all varieties. Every pastry you have out. The soups, the salads, whatever's good. Box it properly." The cashier blinked. "Sir, that's almost 40 items. I can count." His tone dropped to something dangerous. "Is there a problem?" "No, sir. No problem." She grabbed a notepad with shaking hands, started writing frantically. The other staff member, the one who judged them so openly last week, emerged from the back. Her smile was plastic, professional. "That's quite an order. Special occasion." Darius turned his head slowly to look at her. The smile died on her lips. "Last week," he said, his voice quiet but cutting through the lunch crowd noise like a blade, "this woman asked for expired food to feed her daughter. You laughed. Your colleague dismissed her. You treated her like she was nothing." The blood drained from the woman's face. The entire bakery had gone silent. "Today," Darius continued, "you're going to pack the best food in this establishment, and you're going to do it with the same care you'd give your most important customer. Because she is." He straightened, his shadow falling across the counter. "Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." The words came out barely audible. "I asked if you understand me." "Yes, sir." Louder now, humiliated, her face burning red. Darius pulled out his black card, placed it on the counter with deliberate care. Then he knelt down beside Lila, his expensive suit creasing against his knees. "What do you want to drink?" he asked her gently. Lila's eyes were huge. "Hot chocolate, with whipped cream." She nodded enthusiastically. "Two hot chocolates," Darius called over his shoulder, still looking at Lila. "The good kind, and put extra cream on the girls." Mira stood frozen, tears blurring her vision. She'd spent years being invisible, being dismissed, being the woman people looked through instead of at. And now this man, this terrifying, powerful man who made grown adults shake, was rewriting the script entirely. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Darius stood, brushing off his knees. For just a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked, and she saw something raw underneath. Pain, old and deep and still bleeding. Because someone should have done it for me, he said simply. The staff worked in furious silence, packing boxes upon bow. 30 years earlier, Busan. The rain came down in sheets, turning the narrow alley behind the fish market into a river of garbage and runoff. Most people had the sense to stay inside. Most people weren't desperate enough to dig through restaurant waste bins looking for anything edible. Darius was 11 years old and hadn't eaten in 2 days. His mother had been gone for 3 weeks now, whether dead or simply vanished into whatever hole swallowed poor women in this city. He didn't know. The landlord had changed the locks on their room 4 days ago. Everything he owned was either on his back or already stolen. His fingers were numb as he pried open another bin, the metal lid clattering against the brick wall. Inside, soggy cardboard boxes, fish heads crawling with flies, vegetable scraps, too rotten even for him. He gagged, but kept searching. Hunger had a way of rewriting the rules about what counted as food. Hey, get away from there. Darius spun, heart hammering. A restaurant worker stood in the doorway, waving a broom like a weapon. Little thief. I'm calling the police. He ran, slipped on a wet pavement, caught himself, kept running. His vision blurred, from rain or exhaustion or the tears he refused to acknowledge. Behind him, the man was shouting, and somewhere a whistle blew. Darius rounded a corner and slammed directly into someone. They both went down hard. Darius scrambled to get up, to keep running, but a hand caught his wrist. Not rough, gentle but firm. Wait, stop, you're bleeding. He looked down. His knee had split open on the concrete, blood mixing with rainwater and streaming down his shin. He hadn't even felt it. The girl holding his wrist couldn't have been more than 13. Her school uniform was old but clean, patched at the elbows. She had a plastic bag clutched in her other hand, groceries probably. Her face was round, still carrying the softness of childhood, but her eyes were older than they should have been. Let me go, Darius said, trying to pull free. Please. They're coming. Who's coming? She looked past him, down the alley where the shouts were fading. Then back at him, really looking now, taking in his hollow cheeks, his soaked clothes that were too small, the desperation carved into every line of his face. She made a decision. Come on. She pulled him into a recessed doorway, pressing them both back into the shadows. Her hand covered his mouth gently. Don't move. 2 men in restaurant aprons jogged past, cursing the rain and the thief who'd gotten away. They didn't look twice at the doorway. When their footsteps faded, the girl lowered her hand. Darius was shaking, from cold, from fear, from everything. When did you eat last? She asked quietly. He couldn't answer. His throat had closed up. She looked at him for a long moment, then reached into her plastic bag, pulled out a small container, someone's packed lunch. Rice, vegetables, a piece of grilled fish. She opened it and held it out. Take it. Darius stared at the food like it might disappear. What? Because you're hungry. She pushed the container into his hands. And because nobody should have to eat from the trash. He wanted to refuse. Wanted to have enough pride left to turn it down. But pride didn't fill empty stomachs, and his hands were already moving, scooping rice into his mouth with shaking fingers. The girl watched him eat, her expression sad in a way that suggested she understood more than she should. When he'd finished every grain, she reached into the bag again and pulled out a bread roll. This too. What about you? The words came out thick, difficult. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I already ate. This was for later, but later can wait. They sat there in the rain for 20 minutes. She didn't ask his name or where he lived or why he was alone. She just sat with him like being hungry and scared, and bleeding wasn't something to be ashamed of. Like he was still human. When he finally stood to leave, she caught his hand one more time. There's a church on Gwangbok Street. They give out meals on Thursdays. Promise me you'll go. Darius nodded, not trusting his voice. Promise me, she repeated firmly. I promise. She let him go then, and he disappeared back into the rain. He never learned her name, never saw her again, though he looked for her in every crowd for months afterward. But he kept that promise. Went to the church, found food, then shelter, then work. Survived. Clawed his way up from nothing through blood and will and the memory of a girl who'd given him food when she probably didn't have enough herself. Now, standing in the Golden Bakery watching Mira and Lila leave with their arms full of food, Darius felt the weight of 30 years pressing against his chest. He'd never forgotten that rainy alley, never forgotten the kindness that had saved him. And now, finally, he found a way to pay it back. The apartment building stood in a quiet neighborhood Mira had only ever seen from bus windows. The kind of place where trees lined the streets and children played in courtyard without anyone watching them with suspicious eyes. The kind of place that had always existed on the other side of an invisible wall she could never cross. Until now. This can't be right, Mira whispered, staring at the address on the paper Darius had given her. The same address etched into the brass plate beside the entrance. Building 7, Unit 302. Lila pressed her face against the glass door, breath fogging the surface. Mama, look, there's a playground. The security guard inside glanced up, saw them standing there, and his expression shifted, not unkind but evaluating. Mira knew that look. She'd seen it 1,000 times, the look that said you don't belong here. But then he checked something on his computer, his eyebrows rising slightly, and he pressed a button. The door unlocked with a soft click. Ms. Choi, he asked as they entered. Unit 302? Mira nodded, unable to speak. Welcome. He handed her a key card, a real smile touching his face now. Mr. Kong arranged everything. Your unit's fully furnished. If you need anything, just call down. Mr. Kong. Another name, another identity. How many did he have? The elevator was clean and smelled faintly of jasmine. Lila bounced on her toes the entire ride up, talking nonstop about the playground, about the nice guard, about how tall the building was. Mira just held the key card and tried to remember how to breathe. The door to 302 opened onto a space that made her knees weak. Sunlight poured through large windows, illuminating a living room with a real couch. Not salvaged, not stained, but new. A kitchen with gleaming appliances. 2 bedrooms visible through open doors. Clean walls. Smooth floors. Air that smelled like nothing at all, which after years of shelter odors felt like its own kind of luxury. Is this ours? Lila's voice was small, tentative, like she was afraid the answer would be no. Mira couldn't answer. She walked slowly through the space, touching things to confirm they were real. The couch was soft beneath her fingertips. The refrigerator hummed quietly, and when she opened it, she found it stocked. Milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, juice boxes clearly meant for a child. Her vision blurred. In the smaller bedroom, a twin bed weighted with clean white sheets. On the dresser sat a stuffed rabbit, pink and new, with a note in precise handwriting. Asterisk for Lila. Every child deserves something soft to hold at night. Asterisk. Myra's hand flew to her mouth, holding back a sob. Lila ran past her and grabbed the rabbit, hugging it fiercely. Mama, look, it's for me. It has my name. I see it, baby. Myra's voice cracked. I see it. She walked to the master bedroom, almost afraid to look. A larger bed, a real mattress, pillows that looked cloud-soft. In the closet, she found clothes, simple, practical, her size. How had he known? On the nightstand, another note. Asterisk, you start at the community center Monday. Director Kim knows your situation. Take the weekend to settle in. The rent is paid for a year. After that, you'll be able to manage it yourself. You're stronger than you think. Asterisk. Mira sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not the quiet, hidden tears she'd learned to shed in shelters where privacy didn't exist. Real crying. The kind that came from somewhere deep and long buried. Lila appeared in the doorway, still clutching her rabbit. Mama? Are you sad? No, baby. Mira wiped her eyes, tried to smile. I'm happy. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. Because of Mr. Darius? Yes, because of Mr. Darius. Lila climbed onto the bed beside her, leaning into her side. He's like a fairy godfather. That's what my teacher read about in the story. Someone who makes magic happen. Mira pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. Still the same cheap shampoo from the shelter, but soon that would change too. Everything was changing. Something like that, she whispered. Through the window, Seoul stretched out before them. No longer a city that pushed them to its edges, but a city where they finally had a place to stand. Where Lila could have birthday cakes and stuffed rabbits and a bed that was just hers. Where Mira could stop surviving and start living. She looked down at the note again, at the single letter signed at the bottom. D, for Darius, or whoever he really was. A man with multiple names and shadows in his past, who'd looked at her daughter and seen something worth saving. Thank you, she whispered to the empty room, knowing he'd never hear it, but needing to say it anyway. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The kind of sunset that felt like a promise. A new beginning, a new horizon. The office smelled like expensive cigars and something darker, the kind of scent that clung to places where violence was planned with the same care other men plan business deals. Victor Choi spread the photographs across his desk with deliberate precision, each one a piece of intelligence his people had gathered over the past week. His fingers, decorated with gold rings that had cracked more than one jaw, moved from image to image, studying them with the focus of a man who'd built an empire on knowing his enemy's weaknesses. Tell me again, he said, his voice smooth as silk and just as likely to strangle. When did this start? His lieutenant, a wiry man named Gene who'd lost part of his ear in a territorial dispute, shifted his weight. A week ago, boss. The Golden Bakery in Gangnam. Darius Kong walked in during lunch rush, saw some homeless woman getting turned away, and I know what he did. Victor tapped one photograph. Darius kneeling beside a little girl in a pink dress, his expression softer than Victor had ever seen it. What I want to know is why. Another photo showed Darius handing the woman a business card. Another showed him leaving the bakery with bags of food. The most recent showed him standing outside an apartment building in a neighborhood far too nice for someone like her. He set them up in one of his properties. Gene continued. Unit 302, Building 7. Paid a year's rent up front. Got the woman a job at his community center front. Victor's laugh was cold, humorless. Darius Kong, the Ice King of Seoul, playing fairy godfather to street trash. He picked up the photo of the woman, Mira, according to the file Gene had compiled. Plain face, worn clothes, the kind of invisible person who normally wouldn't register on anyone's radar. Except she'd registered on Darius's radar. And that made her interesting. What else do we know about her? Gene consulted his notes. Mira Choi, 28. Been in and out of shelters for 3 years. Father unknown, mother dead. No criminal record. No connections to any organization we know of. She's nobody, boss. Nobody doesn't get Darius Kang's protection. Victor studied the photograph of Mira more closely, searching for whatever Darius had seen. There's something here. Some connection. Maybe he's going soft, Gene suggested. Getting old, losing his edge. Victor's hand shot out, gripping Jin's throat before the sentence finished. Not hard enough to choke, just enough to remind. Darius Kong has never gone soft in his life, Victor said quietly. If he's protecting this woman, it's because she matters to him. And if she matters to him... He released Gene, watched him stumble back, gasping. Then she's leverage. He pulled out a different photograph, this one older, a grainy image from 30 years ago, a rainy alley in Busan, a young boy being helped by a teenage girl. Victor had paid good money for this image, dug through decades of surveillance and street camera footage, pieced together the ghost of Darius's past that the man thought he'd buried. The girl in that old photograph had the same round face, the same soft eyes as the woman in the recent photos. It's not just charity, Victor said, more to himself than to Gene. It's repayment. She helped him once a lifetime ago. Now he's returning the favor. Jin's eyes widened. You think that's her? For Busan. I know it is. Victor's smile was predatory. Darius Kong, the man who shows mercy to no one, has a weakness after all. And her name is Mira Choi. He picked up the photograph of the little girl, Lila, 5 years old, birthday last week. Innocent. Vulnerable. Perfect. The daughter too? Especially the daughter. Victor leaned back in his leather chair, already mapping out the strategy. We've been trying to crack Darius's armor for years. Every attack bounces off, every trap he sees coming. But this... He tapped Lila's photograph. This is the soft underbelly he didn't know he had. What do you want us to do? Victor was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant, calculating. Darius controlled the Eastern Territories, had twice as many soldiers, 3 times the connections. A direct confrontation would be suicide, but indirect pressure applied to the right leverage point. Nothing yet, he said finally. We watch. We wait. We let Darius get comfortable. Let him think his little rescue mission is a secret. Victor's smile widened. And then, when he least expects it, we remind him why mercy is a luxury men like us can't afford. Jean nodded, gathering the photographs. And Jean, Victor called as his lieutenant reached the door. Make sure our people stay invisible. If Darius even suspects we're watching, he'll move them somewhere we can't reach. Patience now means power later. Understood, boss. The door closed, leaving Victor alone with the photographs spread across his desk like a hand of cards about to be played. He picked up the image of Darius kneeling beside the little girl one more time, studying the expression on his rival's face. Softness, care, the kind of emotion that made men weak. Enjoy your redemption, Darius, Victor murmured. It's going to cost you everything. Darius noticed the car first. A black sedan parked 3 buildings down from Myra's apartment, same spot for 2 days running. Different plates each time, but the same model, the same tinted windows, the same deliberate positioning that gave a clear view of the entrance. Amateur hour, he thought, or a message. He sat in his own vehicle across the street, engine off, watching a watcher. His phone buzzed with a text from Lee, his head of security, confirmed. Victor's people, at least 3 surveillance points around the building. They've been there since Monday, since the day Mira started her new job. Since the day Darius had let himself believe, just for a moment, that he could do something good without consequences. He should have known better. In this world, his world, every act of kindness was a target painted on your back. Every moment of weakness was ammunition for your enemies. He'd survived 2 decades by being untouchable, unmovable, by caring about nothing and no one enough to give anyone leverage. And then he'd knelt beside a little girl in a pink dress and ruined everything. His phone buzzed again. A photo this time, grainy, long distance, but clear enough. Lila on the playground, pushing herself on the swing set, her new stuffed rabbit sitting on the bench beside her. The angle of the shot made Darius's blood run cold. Taken from a rooftop, a sniper's perch. They weren't just watching. They were measuring range. How long? He texted back. Since Tuesday. No hostile action yet. Just observation. Yet, that word carried all the weight of inevitability. Darius's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. He'd played this game 1,000 times. The chess match of threat and counter-threat. The slow escalation that ended in blood. But this time, the pieces on the board weren't his soldiers or his businesses. This time, it was a woman who'd once given him food when she was barely more than a child herself. And her daughter, who'd done nothing except exist in the blast radius of his past. He dialed a number, waited through 2 rings. I need a full security detail, he said without preamble. Armed, rotating shifts, civilian clothes. And I need them yesterday. For the woman, his lieutenant's voice was carefully neutral. Boss, with respect, that's going to draw attention. If Victor doesn't know you care yet, he knows. Darius watched the sedan across the street, watched the barely perceptible shift as someone inside adjusted their position. He's been watching long enough to know exactly how much I care, which means the surveillance phase is almost over. Silence on the other end, heavy with implication. How many men? His lieutenant finally asked. As many as it takes. Darius started his engine, already planning routes, safe houses, contingencies. And give me everything we have on Victor's current operations. If he's moving against me, he's left something exposed. Nobody plays defense and offense perfectly. And the woman? Does she know? That was the question, wasn't it? Did he tell Mira that his kindness had marked her for death? That the apartment he'd given her was now a cage with invisible bars? That every moment of safety she'd felt this past week was an illusion about to shatter? Not yet, Darius said, though the words tasted like ash. But soon. I need to move them first, somewhere Victor can't. His phone buzzed with another photo. This one made his heart stop. Mira, walking out of the community center, Lila's hand in hers. Both of them smiling, unaware of the camera, documenting their happiness. And in the corner of the image, barely visible, a man in a dark jacket. Too close. Too focused. The timestamp read, 2 minutes ago. Darius floored the accelerator, tires screaming against pavement. The community center was 15 minutes away in traffic. He'd make it an 8. Send everyone, he barked into the phone. Every available unit to the community center on Myeongdong. Now, boss, what's happening? Victor's making his move. If we're not there first, they're gone. He disconnected, weaving through traffic with the kind of reckless precision that came from years of high-speed chases. His mind raced faster than the car, calculating, strategizing, cursing himself for being so blind. The trash sandwiches hadn't been the beginning of the hunger. They'd been bait, and he'd walked right into Victor's trap by caring too much to stay away. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. You saved her once in an alley in Busan. Let's see if you can do it again. Vey. Darius's vision tunneled, rage and fear mixing into something cold and lethal. Victor hadn't just found his weakness. He'd found the one thing Darius couldn't afford to lose twice. The speedometer climbed past 90. In the rearview mirror, soul blurred into streaks of light and shadow. 7 minutes to the community center. 7 minutes to find out if he was already too late. Darius reached the community center in 6 minutes, his car screeching to a halt in front of the entrance hard enough to leave rubber on the pavement. His men were already there. 4 of them in civilian clothes, positioned at strategic points, their presence invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Lee met him at the door, his expression grim. They're inside. 3rd floor, childcare center. No hostiles entered the building, but there's movement on the street. Victor's people are circling. How many? At least 6 that we've identified. Could be more. Darius didn't wait for the rest. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. Through the 3rd floor window, he could see them, Mira helping Lila color at a small table, both of them safe, whole, unaware. For now, he pushed through the door. Mira looked up, startled, then confused. Her smile of recognition died when she saw his face. We need to talk, Darius said. Now. She glanced at Lila, who was absorbed in her drawing, then back at him. Something in his tone made her stand without argument. Director Kim, could you? I'll watch her, the older woman said, already moving toward Lila. Her eyes met Darius's briefly, understanding passing between them. She knew who he was, what he was, and right now, that was the only thing keeping this building safe. Darius led Mira to a small office, closed the door, and locked it. The gesture wasn't lost on her. Her posture shifted, defensive, afraid. What's happening? Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. You're in danger. You and Lila. He didn't soften it, didn't cushion the blow. There wasn't time. A rival organization has been watching you for days. They know about the apartment, about your job, about everything I've done for you. The color drained from her face. Why? We're nobody. We don't. Because you're connected to me. Darius pulled out his phone, showed her the surveillance photos. Her hand flew to her mouth when she saw the image of Lila on the playground, taken from a sniper's angle. They think hurting you will hurt me. And they're right. Mira backed against the wall, her breathing rapid. Then we'll leave. We'll disappear. Go somewhere they can't find us. There is nowhere they can't find you. His voice was harder than he meant it to be, but she needed to understand. Victor Choi has resources that span continents. If you run, he'll hunt you. And when he catches you, it won't be quick. Then what do you want from me? The question came out broken, desperate. You gave me hope. You gave my daughter a life. And now you're saying it was all for nothing? No. Darius reached into his jacket and pulled out something he never thought he'd give to someone like her. A compact pistol, black and cold and loaded. He sat on the desk between them. I'm saying I'm giving you a choice. Mira stared at the weapon like it was a snake. You can take Lila and go into protective custody. My people will keep you safe in a secure location until I neutralize the threat. You'll be prisoners, essentially, but you'll be alive. He paused, his jaw tight. or you can stay. Let me fortify your apartment, surround you with armed guards, and use you as bait to draw Victor out into the open. Bait? Her voice rose. You want to use my daughter as bait? I want to end this. Darius's control cracked just slightly. Victor won't stop. Not now that he knows what you mean to me. If we hide, he'll wait. He'll plan. And eventually, he'll strike when we least expect it. But if we control the battlefield, if we force his hand now. You're insane. Mira moved toward the door. I'm taking Lila, and we're leaving. I don't care about your war or your... 30 years ago, in a rainy alley in Busan, you saved my life. The words stopped her cold. You gave me food when you barely had enough yourself. You didn't ask questions. You didn't judge. You just helped. She turned slowly, her eyes wide with recognition finally dawning. You were the boy, she whispered. The one by the fish market. I thought you died. I looked for you afterward, but you were gone. I survived. Because of you. Darius picked up the pistol, held it out to her. Now I'm asking you to let me return the favor. Not by running, not by hiding, but by standing your ground and letting me protect what matters. Mira looked at the gun, at him, at the door behind which her daughter was drawing pictures of rainbows and unicorns. If I do this, she said slowly, and something happens to Lila, then you can use that gun on me. His voice was absolute. I swear on everything I am, she will not be harmed. Not while I'm breathing. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Finally, Mira reached out and took the pistol. Her hand didn't shake anymore. Teach me how to use it, she said, and then tell me where you need me to stand. Darius felt something shift in his chest. Respect, maybe, or recognition. This woman, who'd once given scraps to a starving boy, was now choosing to be steel wrapped in silk. We start now, he said. Outside, Victor's people were circling. But inside, the prey was learning to bite back. They came at 2:47 a.m., when the world was darkest and most people slept deepest. Darius was awake. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight, watching the monitors in Myra's living room that now showed every angle of the building's exterior. His men were positioned at key points, 2 in the lobby, 3 on the stairwells, 1 on the roof. Mira sat across from him, the pistol he'd given her resting in her lap, her eyes tired but alert. Lila slept in the bedroom, guarded by Lee himself. The first warning came from the roof guard, a brief, strangled sound over the radio, then silence. They're inside, Darius said, his voice eerily calm. He stood, checking his own weapon with practiced efficiency. Mira, get to Lila's room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. What about you? I'll slow them down. He looked at her, something fierce burning in his eyes. Remember what I taught you. Sit her mass. Don't hesitate. And if anyone comes through that door who isn't me, I shoot. Her voice was steady now. Fear transformed into cold determination. Good girl. He moved toward the apartment door, then paused. Mira? I meant what I said. She won't be harmed. I promise. Then he was gone, slipping into the hallway, just as the stairwell door exploded inward. The first attacker came through fast, tactical gear, suppressed pistol already raised. Darius put 2 rounds center mass before the man's weapon cleared the doorframe. The body dropped with a heavy thud. 2 more behind him. Darius rolled left, using the hallway corner for cover, firing as he moved. 1 went down screaming, the other ducked back into the stairwell. From below, Darius heard gunfire, his men engaging on the lower floors. The lights went out. Emergency backup illumination kicked in, bathing everything in red. Victor had planned well. Cut the power, hit from multiple directions, overwhelm through sheer numbers. But Victor had made one critical mistake. He'd given Darius something worth protecting, and a motivated Darius was the most dangerous version of himself. A flash grenade sailed through the darkness. Darius turned away, eyes closed, the explosion still ringing through his skull. Shapes moved through the smoke, 3, maybe 4. He fired blind, heard a body hit the wall. Then they were on him. A fist caught his jaw, spinning his vision. He blocked the follow-up, drove his elbow into someone's throat, felt cartilage crunch. Another attacker grabbed his gun arm. Darius let him, used the leverage to drive his head into the man's nose. Blood sprayed hot across his face. Behind him, the apartment door. Behind that door, Mira and Lila. That was the line Victor couldn't cross. More attackers poured from the stairwell. 5, 6, too many to count. Darius's magazine ran dry. He dropped the pistol, pulled a knife from his belt, and became something primal. The hallway turned into a slaughterhouse. He moved through them like a ghost made of violence, every strike lethal, every movement efficient. A blade to the kidney, a broken windpipe, a severed artery painting the walls red. He took hits. A knife sliced his shoulder, a bullet grazed his ribs, but pain was abstract, distant, less real than the need to protect what was behind that door. The last attacker hesitated, saw the bodies stacked in the hallway, saw Darius standing in the center of the carnage like a demon summoned from hell itself. The man ran. Darius led him. One survivor to carry the message back to Victor. This is what happens when you threaten what's mine. He stumbled back to the apartment door, left a bloody handprint on the wood. Mira, it's me. Open up. Silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened a crack, revealing Myra's face, pale but resolute, the pistol raised and ready. Behind her, he could hear Lila crying softly, scared but alive. Alive. Mira saw the blood. His blood, their blood, impossible to tell whose, and her expression cracked. Oh God, you're hurt. It's over. Darius pushed inside, locked the door behind him. His legs gave out, and he caught himself against the wall. For now, they won't come back tonight. You're bleeding everywhere. Mira was already moving, grabbing towels, her hands shaking again, but still functional. Lila, stay in your room, baby. Everything's okay. Darius sank onto the couch, his vision tunneling. Through the window, dawn was beginning to break over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful. Strange how beautiful the world could be when you just killed 8 men to protect it. How many? Mira asked as she pressed a towel to his shoulder. Enough. He winced as she applied pressure. Victor will know now. Know that I won't let you go. Know that this war just became personal. What happens next? Darius looked at her. This woman who'd saved him as a boy, who'd chosen steel over silk when it mattered most, who was now pressing towels to his wounds while her daughter cried in the next room. Next, he said quietly, I end it before he gets another chance. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The penthouse war was over, but the real battle was just beginning. The safe house was a concrete box buried in the industrial district, the kind of place that didn't appear on any map and had exits most people would never find. Darius had owned it for 7 years and never once needed to use it. Until now. Mira sat on a threadbare couch, Lila curled against her side, finally asleep after hours of crying. The child's face was puffy, her rabbit clutched so tightly against her chest that the seams were starting to split. They'd left the apartment with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and the gun Mira still carried in her jacket pocket. Darius stood by the reinforced window, his shoulder bandaged but still seeping red through the gauze. He'd refused proper medical attention. No hospitals, no records, nothing that could be traced. Lee had done what he could with field supplies, but the knife wound needed stitches that weren't coming. You should rest, Mira said quietly, careful not to wake Lila. I'll rest when this is over. His voice was hollow, distant. She'd watched that distance grow over the past 6 hours, watched him retreat into whatever dark place men like him went when the bodies piled too high. How many did you kill? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and unavoidable. Darius turned from the window, his expression unreadable in the dim light. 8 in the hallway. 3 more on the lower floors before they reached us. He said it like he was reading a grocery list, clinical and detached. Victor sent 15. Only 2 made it out alive. Mira should have been horrified, should have grabbed Lila and run from this man who spoke of death with such casual efficiency. But instead, she felt something else, gratitude, terrible and complicated, that this monster was on her side. The police came, she said. After. I heard the sirens. They won't find anything. Darius moved away from the window, lowered himself carefully into a chair across from her. My people cleaned the scene before the first unit arrived. As far as the official record shows, There was a gas leak and a small fire. Nothing more. You can just erase 13 bodies? I can erase anything. There was no pride in the statement, just exhaustive fact. That's what power means in my world. The ability to rewrite reality until it matches the story you want told. Lila stirred in her sleep, whimpering. Mira stroked her hair, making soft shushing sounds until the child settled again. When she looked up, Darius was watching them with an expression that made her chest ache. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "I knew what I was, knew what touching my world would do to you. But I did it anyway because I was selfish, because I wanted to believe I could save you without destroying you in the process. You did save us. Did I?" He gestured at the concrete walls, the single-barred window, the door with 3 deadbolts. "You're hiding in a bunker, your daughter's traumatized, and there are men out there right now planning how to hurt you just to hurt me. This isn't salvation, Mira. This is a different kind of cage." She was quiet for a long moment, her hands still moving through Lila's hair, feeling the steady rise and fall of her daughter's breathing. Alive. Safe. That had to count for something. 30 years ago, she said finally, "I gave you food in an alley. Do you know why?" Darius shook his head. "Because my father used to beat me when he was drunk, and my mother pretended not to notice. Because I knew what it felt like to be hungry and scared and invisible." She met his eyes across the dim room. "I didn't save you that day because I was a good person. I saved you because I understood. What's your point?" "My point is that we're all caged by something. Before you, it was poverty and shelters and watching my daughter go hungry on her birthday. Now it's this." She looked around the safe house. "At least this cage has you standing guard outside it. At least in this cage, my daughter has food and warmth and someone willing to kill to keep her safe." Darius's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have to choose between types of cages. No one should, but we don't get to live in that world." Mira adjusted Lila's weight against her, felt the solid reality of her daughter's presence. "So I'll take the cage with the guard dog over the one with the wolves any day." Something shifted in Darius's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Relief, maybe, or recognition that she understood the math of survival as well as he did. "Victor won't stop," he said. "I know. This ends with one of us dead. I know that too. And you're still willing to stay?" Mira looked down at Lila, then back at him. Her hand moved to the pocket where the gun rested, cold and heavy against her hip. "You taught me how to shoot," she said. "Now, teach me how to survive." Outside, Seoul woke to another ordinary morning. Traffic and commerce, and people living lives that had nothing to do with concrete safe houses or men who erased bodies like they erased mistakes. But inside this bunker, 2 people who'd saved each other across the span of 30 years were preparing for war. And this time, they were preparing together.